evening, brother. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Seen better days, but
Yeah?
here we are.
I hear that. I hear that, man. I've just been giving the viewers a little bit of the rundown of some of your credentials. I mean, boy, they speak for themselves. But yeah, I love. Do you know what? I love the term that you've got up here, which is a design activist. I
Uh-huh.
like that, right? I like
Yeah.
that. What was the inspiration behind that?
I think design activism is a term that I came across a few years ago, and it quite nicely described. Um, my brother's just signed in talking about pressure. Go ahead, go ahead, go boy. Yeah, um, yeah. Design activism. The thing about design activism is it's more about like how you look at the challenges that we face and you approach it in a more generative way rather than just criticizing, breaking down. You're actually about testing little things, trying little things to start a conversation, and actually propose solutions. So it quite it quite nicely described how I think about my work and what I do, and it's in lots of different spaces, I guess.
hmm hmm And what I love about that is this idea that, when it comes to some of the world's biggest challenges, I guess we often look to science as the answer, right?
Mm,
We think of that as, science is going to bring about the solution to the world's ills.
mm,
That more, I guess that'd be the more right-sided part of the brain. And kind of what I love
left
about
side,
left-sided, of course you do.
yeah.
But yeah, more left-sided. Whereas what I love about what you do is you really demonstrate this idea of kind of merging the,
Mm,
the creative with this idea of this dualism that we're so used to of like,
yeah, yeah.
the creative people do this, they're over there painting and drawing in the corner,
Mm,
putting pasta up their nose, right? And then you've
mhm,
got the brainiacs over here in the left doing difficult trigonometry, and
yeah,
never the two should meet. But with the
yeah,
work
yeah,
you're doing, there's a clear cohesion of the two parts of the brain, and
yeah,
I,
yeah.
and I really do love that. How Give us an example of a way in which that merge has happened, where you've been faced with a more traditional type of um, problem, and where you've applied a creative solution.
Um, well, I think the left brain, right brain thing is it's more about which one you maybe default to or find more dominant. So it's not that people can't use both,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like a lot of the time I do move with my gut a lot. Like I don't necessarily always over process, over intellectualize things. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very much a person that moves with how I feel and my intuition a lot more. But I definitely, it's about valuing both worlds. And I guess to answer your question about examples about where these things are, where these approaches work, I guess when I'm holding space for different minds to come together to address a challenge, because um, the type of challenges that we're facing these days, they can't just be solved by
Mm.
one approach or one mind or one type of idea, way of approaching ideas. It needs lots of different ways. It needs us to deal with things more holistically. So I guess a lot of my work and how I approach work is about creating space where those different people can come together and can kind of see where their entry points will be and make the space where different sides can can work together. And I guess in the bio there that I caught the end of that, you reading out my bio, and um, yeah, some of the examples that you read out around working with local government or working in spaces where there's complex challenges. Those types of people that work in these sorts of spaces
Mm-hmm.
tend to depend. They often have a sort of path dependency on like things that they've always done and
Mm-hmm.
ways they've always approached challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the one example of a project that we worked on was dealing with youth Well, actually, I think one that was really interesting was fostering and adoption, and how you engage people in like taking up the idea of fostering and adoption in our communities.
Mhm.
And we worked with people in the city council, a team of people who were dealing with the websites, and got them to go on a journey to actually speak to people and empathize with them, listen to them. People speak to children, speak to parents, speak to non-parents, speak to the fostering and adoption agencies, and actually then really listen deeply to what they were saying. So then you connect with them on a sort of human level, and then going on that journey together. Then when they distill those insights with different minds and different interpretations, that's when you start to get the interesting different approaches that come up.
Mhm.
So it's just really creating a space where those different perspectives can be held,
Mhm.
and then the job then is like how they converge and bring those ideas together into
Mhm.
some sort of solution or idea that they can try and test.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was kind of very early stage work that I'd done, and it took the form of like a week long series of workshops that we held with a team in
Mhm.
the local government. Yeah, and just finding the exact points of intervention.
Yeah.
And there's many of them, and often they have to be done at the same time, so that's where it gets hard. But yeah,
So
that's just one example of things.
I love it. And here's the thing, yeah. So you are, um, and this is what I think. Yeah, this is what I'm excited to ask you about. Like, you really believe in global community, right? You. I feel as though. So correct me if I'm wrong. I feel as though you see yourself as a global citizen, right? You're. I feel like you see yourself in that way, and you
What
are
gave you that impression?
everything that I see you do, from the teams that you work with. The
Yeah,
teams that you work with are always very diverse,
yeah, oh,
um,
yeah,
and that, I think that is probably the biggest giveaway, because I think that it's easy for anyone from any community to default into people that look like them, right?
mm,
I've noticed that
mm,
you. I don't know if you seek this out intentionally, or if just as the way in which you deal with life, these opportunities have come to you. But as a result of that, I just wondered how you think about, we're celebrating Black Future Month here. Like,
mm,
how do you, because you are very much a Black man, like you are proud of your roots and you're proud of your heritage and you're proud of all of that. And also you are proud of being, I feel as though you're proud of being a citizen of the world, right?
yeah,
So how do you how do you feel and think about your identity, um, as a citizen of the world, or are these two in intentional? How do they kind of dovetail together? Is it? Do you see what I'm kind of getting at?
yeah.
Yeah,
Such a deep question. Such a deep question that is, because I guess also even the observation of me as a global citizen, I'm still very rooted in the
yeah,
place where I live,
yeah.
um, but I have, I think, guess from a very young age, like recognized the possibilities through the power of the internet and
Mm,
connectivity, and
mm,
drawing inspiration from elsewhere when you don't see it where you are.
mm,
And I think from that perspective, I would say every time I feel a bit jaded or a bit stagnant where I live, or I feel like I don't belong or I don't connect with what's going on, like what I see directly around me,
mm.
I'll seek it out elsewhere.
Yeah,
But it doesn't necessarily mean that I will leave where I'm where I am born and raised, and like where I really know
yeah,
physically and tangibly. So um I guess that kind of links to the conversation about my identity as a Black man. And if you follow me on Instagram or have followed the things that I've been doing recently, I shared a series of videos about what I've been doing on my street in my neighborhood, and reconnection with the place where was I spent the first 4 years of my life, and I live here again now. been here for the last 3 years, and just thinking about the land around the house where I live and
Mm,
my relationship to it, and um, exploring that, exploring what it means to really belong here, when you're always told that maybe you don't, or you're always questioned on a very micro level whether this is where you belong or where you live. So um, I think the land conversation has been a
mm,
key, key thing within my exploration around that. Like, what is this construct of land that we have, like where people feel like it can be owned, or it can be named, or it can be like sectioned off, and but actually we all it's all actually connected, and we're all living off the same land. So
mm,
um, yeah, those things are all constructs that humans have created, and
mhm,
stories that we tell ourselves.
mhm,
Actually, they create more divisions than is necessary sometimes, or um,
mhm.
so
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 then, do you feel that same way about race? How do you feel about race? Do you feel as though, just like we land is a construct, all this idea
mm,
of owning property, and I love this conversation. We're going to come back to this because I know you were specific. I know you experienced quite an interesting. You had an interesting experience learning about how the Native Americans think and feel about land, right? So we'll
mm,
come to that because I loved what you shared with me about that. But
mm,
do
some of
you
that.
feel race in the same way? Like, how do you think about race and black and what the whole notion of race, right? How do you internalize that?
Uh, yeah, as I said, it's a thing that causes divisions, and is a human construct. That there's nothing in our biology necessarily that says um, that we that we should have less resource because our genetic makeup or whatever. There's nothing in there, and so that from that perspective, it's a myth. And uh,
Mm,
I guess more recently, just learning more about the eugenics side of it, like where you've got like the very notion of certain scientific premises are racist in themselves, in that like it was created from that perspective of like um this idea that the darker skinned people are further down the evolutionary cycle, and um therefore they are less than human.
mhm,
And so all these ideas are what a lot of our systems are built upon, and then come out in so many different ways. So I find the notion of race very tiring and very complex to unpack, and
mm,
um, I don't like talking about it too much
mhm,
because I feel like your actions need to show
mhm,
what 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 is right in that respect.
mhm, mhm.
Um, yeah.
Mm, mm. No, I hear that, and I think for someone like you who does think so creatively about things, I think you can see you are more likely in a position where you can see where this construct or this idea, how it impacts and how it plays out in different ways, right? Someone
Mm,
might see it in a very linear way again, like, oh, this is, how, I got on the bus and the driver didn't say hi to me. It's because they're racist, right? Or whatever. Like in those more direct ways that we might try and interpret it. But in your experience, you are more thinking about it in the creative way. Like, just for example, this idea of land. Let's go back to this idea of land and how, and you mentioned it earlier, how because of the amount of melanin in us in one's skin determines almost how much access to resources or land they should have. Like that is just a myth that
mm.
has been propagated. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ways I feel like I've felt it being like coming from a more creative background is this idea of who gets to like have the resource to create the things that they want to create, and like I think black people, we we thrive off creativity, and our culture is our biggest, I guess, resource a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Our biggest, um, yeah, it's like our culture is what keeps us going. It's what keeps us thriving.
Mm.
And to regenerate your culture, it requires creativity, and the resource to be able to do that is often held back from Black people. Yet we do it. You see it
Mm.
everywhere. But I think, yeah, going down the path of working in design and working as a designer, thinking about design, to be able to try and test out different things. This something might work or not, and that requires resource and requires money. That often we haven't
Uh-huh.
got that, or we haven't got the space or the financial resource or the materials that are needed to go on that journey. And so it's often a privileged profession to be in
Right.
because of that.
Because of that
So
barrier to entry.
yeah, because of that barrier to entry, and it's like that with a lot of professions, I guess, as well. But often with design, you create something new that you can only pursue by your imagination and what you perceive might be possible. So
Yeah.
from that perspective, it's kind of harder to explain a lot of the time what you're doing. So the I think that's led me to do, I think, in a lot of my work is think about what it takes to democratize the access to that sort of resource, so that
Mm.
more Black people, more people of color can enter that space of design and making their dreams happen and crafting the world, shaping the world around them that they want to create.
Mm.
Uh, and like, I wouldn't. I I have certain privileges as a Black man. Like, my parents raised me, and um, we're not well off, never were, but like, we didn't necessarily want or need, and if we never really were left wanting in that respect.
Mm.
Um, so using that privilege as what enabled me to move down the path that I wanted to, and pursue the things that I wanted to pursue in life. And it's not been a linear journey either. It's been like a lot of twists and turns and backs and forths, and um, being comfortable with that uncertainty is a key thing.
But isn't that crazy though that you feel as though having the bases covered as a child was a privilege? Like,
Mm,
that's just a tip. I just find that such a typical, like, um, what's the word? Minority perspective. Like, we always see things from. We have the potential. We have the power to see things from a different view. Like, it's like, yeah, no, I
yeah.
don't have what Jim and Jane and Jack have,
Mm,
but I always had food on the table. It's like, what, like, it's so amazing that I think that, and I see that a lot with our
yeah.
culture,
Yeah.
that we
Definitely.
do that, and I think it has two sides to it. Actually,
Yeah.
I think on the one side, it maybe makes us not push for some things, some of us,
Yeah.
because what's there to push for? I've got food on the table.
Yeah.
I'm doing better than my parents or my grandparents did. Like, this progression here. I'm okay just where I'm at now. I don't need to push further. Um, and that can be a negative side of it. But at the same time, of course, it's more likely to leave you with a feeling of contentment, isn't it? That
Yeah.
whatever you have, you're happy with your portion. Yeah?
Yeah. Definitely, it's a double-edged sword, because, like, I think even the spaces in which I've been working and the people which I've been working with, I've had to fight this idea that I don't belong here, and it's just the smallest. Like, if a space looks really beautiful and like really well kitted out and stuff like that, you often have this internal thing of like, if I don't see someone else here who looks like me, and this space looks so nice, I don't belong here, or I can't exist here. Like, or maybe I can be here for a bit, but then at some point it will be out of my reach. I feel
Mm,
like, as a people, deep down, these things come up, and
yeah.
it's some other factors that often have to create that permission to continue to be in those spaces. I've dealt with that myself, and also just like it's interesting because the idea of belonging somewhere, creating a sense of belonging or ownership over something, it's half created in influence that, I think, you know what I mean. So
Yep, yep, yep. No, yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's just so much, so many places we go. And speaking about that in that space and feeling, um, or wondering if you belong in that space. You know, you went from correct me if I'm wrong again, but with Civic Square, you recently became a director. Is
yeah,
that correct? Right.
yeah,
So, congratulations. How did that feel? Talk to us a little bit about. I know you've been a founder, a co-founder of your own
yeah.
initiatives before. So your credentials are, what I mean, you're certi, as they say in the end. You're certified. But how did it feel to get I guess, that stamp from a diverse group of
Mm.
actually, not that you need it, but that, I guess, that validation from the outside source.
Um, to be honest, it was inevitable because the work that I put in to get to that point, and if any of the team are watching, no, agree, because it was just we were
I
holding,
love that.
even though I was working, because before we became Civic Square, we were holding the thing together.
Yeah.
Like me, myself, and the other my other colleague being who was also
So you're covered. I think you covered. Have you covered the mic a bit? Have you covered the mic? Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
you
Go
hear
on.
me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. I think myself and my colleague being we really were the engine behind a lot of what had happened before. But actually stepping into the role of director, it's not really any kind of it's it it's there's nothing necessarily privileged about being in this position.
Hmm.
It's just more risk. It's
Yeah.
just more that's really what we're holding, the risks and having to think ahead a lot more. And so it's a hard job. It's not
Yeah.
if, even having that title. I know people want that title a lot of the time, but you
They
don't.
think they want it.
They think they want that title, but what it comes with is a whole lot of a whole heap of other things. Like, because you like, I think for me, like across my journey, I've always been someone who's like, I've created the spaces of something that I just probably actually just wanted to attend. Um,
Mm.
so I've always had to just create the space to something that I just wanted to attend, and this is probably another example of that. Being the
Wow.
director
Wow.
of this is like, it's great in many ways because it's like a really what an amazing like mission and a complete honor to be a part of because of the work that we're doing and the people that I'm working with.
Yeah.
But it's also really hard because it's quite complex and
Yeah.
there's so many different layers to the work and like things change so quickly and it's really difficult to keep up sometimes.
Yeah. Now,
So, and I'm constantly learning, constantly learning.
for me, it's phenomenal because um, for me, and I say this all the time to people, when it comes to leadership, right, and promotion and I guess moving through the levels of leadership, all really it is again, from the outside world, there is some recognition and esteem that they will give to people who are directors.
Yeah,
But to be honest with you, I've seen it myself. It basically is how much can you carry, basically.
yeah,
That's basically when you and that's what I think a lot of people don't, some people don't realize. It's that someone who seems to be higher up in the leadership, they've just got more burdens to carry.
mm,
Like, it sounds crazy to say, but and actually I make sure that doesn't happen. There we go. I think everyone in what happens with leadership is everyone, no matter what stage of leadership you're at, there comes a challenge or there comes some point where where more is demanded of you, and
yeah,
at that point, that's where you have the choice. where if you want to step up or not. It's like, okay, this is now what this level takes. You have to deal with this now. So I think it's perfect the way you summed it up. It's like to be a director, you know, of an organization. And I think this is why as well, what you see in leadership and in big organizations or small is that CEOs or directors or even managers of football teams, they move. Like you think, why do they just, how come they get a job so easy? They move within the
Yeah.
ranks so easily, but it's because you know what it takes. Yes, you might not be a supreme winner every time because only one team can win and there's only one Apple. Do you know what I mean? There's only one Amazon. Like, not everyone can be Apple, not everyone can be Amazon, not everyone can be Facebook.
Yeah.
But the point is that they know there is some level of understanding that you understand the pressure really that these roles take. But I still think it's huge. I still think it's, you know, massive that I guess you have demonstrated and you are willing to put yourself in a position where no, I'm going to carry more.
Yeah.
I think that's powerful, and I think it is a powerful example to those who look to you and those who are around you to see, because again there is a lot of ideas about what Black people can and can't do, right? So much. I don't know if other cultures have it the same about themselves, but I do think that within our culture, like, you know, we've grown up with things like, you know, Black people don't swim, Black people don't do this, Black people don't do that, Black people don't. I remember a story that I think it's Shaquille O'Neal tells, the basketballer. Um, I think it's either him or Magic Johnson, one of them, when they were approached to invest in Starbucks like really early on, and he was like, "Nah, Black people don't drink coffee," and he didn't invest in Starbucks like right early on, right? And that's just an example of an opportunity missed because of these ideas that people have around what Black people can and can't do, and it's true. I don't see a lot of again, maybe it's who you know as well, but I do think it is a big deal to be able to see yourself represented in different positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if I because I always say, like, when I first landed at Impact Hub, I always say that, like, had I not been like really close friends with my white friend who I was doing the work with, I might not have stuck around there. I was kind of just, I was like, I liked it and everything, and I connected, but I didn't see myself. I wasn't thinking ahead at that point. It was only until a bit later down the line when I saw what was really going on and looked behind that I was like, I can get down with this. And I think the same has happened with many other people of being a part of this. And I don't think it's not always because of the space isn't welcoming to us. Sometimes we also internalize things that prevent us from engaging in things that could be for us. It's always hard, like, with that, because yes, there's always messaging to us that's telling us that we don't belong, or we're not, or this is for you. It's like actually discerning when that's actually going on.
Yeah, and it's so weird. I just think that we also it's so mad that because you think that, or the temptation can be to think that people who get those opportunities or who are promoted those things, you sometimes think that they are somehow more equipped for it. But a lot of the time, what I've realized as I've worked in organizations is that they're not any more equipped. Like, there's nothing special about them. And most people start from a position of not knowing what they're doing in most positions. Like you're not more of an imposter. Like, we sometimes feel like we're an imposter in these opportunities, but you're not more of an imposter. And it's funny, the last client I worked with during COVID, actually, during I was working with a charity, and when all the stuff started happening with Black Lives Matter, and they started looking as an organization, like, how are we addressing issues of race and equality, which they weren't really, and they're still not really, but nevertheless, one thing that we did when we looked around, I started speaking to the other 7 Black people who worked in this organization. There's about 100 people in the company, well, maybe 80 people in the company. So the other 7 in the company, And I started to say things like, because look, there's no one in the C-suite. There's no minority representation in the C-suite, or there's no none of the trustees, no
Mm.
representation in the trustees.
Mm.
And people were like, but then some people were like, oh, what's the C-suite? Like, what's the C-suite? Or others were like, oh, trustees. Oh no. In fact, one person actually, because I was like, at that point when I thought I was going to revolutionize this organization, they were like, um, you know, I said I would love to be a trustee, and they were like, oh, well, trustee, well, you kind of have to have really proved yourself with a big like multi-million-pound organization or da 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 da. I was already being spoken out of these ideas by people who look like me, and I thought that was really interesting because again, we just to have a decent job and be getting decent money, it's like, again, going back to what we said earlier, there's that satisfaction in it, like, mama, I've made it, right? Like, not even to know that there's a C-suite, not even to know how the directorship works, not even to know, like, not to, just to become a bit familiar with it. I think sometimes, yeah, there's a settling that happens when we feel like we've reached our peak.
Yeah.
We're better than those people. Where we've reached a higher level. Our friends and family, people closest to us, are already looking up to us. So come on, I made it, right? How
Mm.
do you keep fueling that fire for yourself? Like, how do you keep pushing and fueling that fire?
I think for me, the validation doesn't come from people understanding necessarily what I'm doing or having being able to talk about me or um, being able to. The validation that the drive for me comes from the mission that we're on and what we're about. I think when you chase the titles and the accolades too much, it doesn't. You're just then doing it for the wrong reasons, and I think there's too much of that going on. Why companies are not actually meeting their goals or meeting their missions? When you think about like certain sectors of work, what have a really noble mission or noble cause, and they're not actually doing what they're saying they're doing. And I think it's because the people who are running those organizations or leading those organizations are maybe not doing it necessarily for the right reasons.
Wow.
Or are not. They're seen. They're doing it because they're seen to look good or have that title. And it's deep because I can totally understand how you get there. Because it's like when if you're seeing someone is a CEO or a director or something, then you automatically assume that they influence on, and sometimes it's literally just the title, but it's about the it's about people perceive others when they have those titles. So
yeah.
So for me, like when I say, because my first company that I started after university, like I saw what it takes to be something and be a director, and the responsibility that comes like when you have employees and have people that you're responsible for.
Yeah.
And like for me, that was super scary. And I deep down, like the responsibility of that felt very heavy.
Yeah.
And like after I ran that first company and moved on after that, I continued to stay freelance and work for myself, but like I never thought about employing other people or doing that because it's difficult. But then when I decided to take it on with Civic Square, it was because it felt much more aligned to what I really wanted to do, and there was a group of people that actually were dope and were on it. Like so, the trust that was built and the care made me take that step again and actually go for it. So.
I love it. And we've called this Black Future Month, and one of the main reasons that we've done that is I want to speak to people who I believe are influential, who are already being influential, and I believe will continue to be influential in shaping the best of what the future has to offer from our community. And I really do think you're one of those individuals. And because of these creative ideas and the way you bring synergy to ideas. So talk to us now about this idea of land, that the Native Americans have, or the way in which they engage with it, and how you are starting, I guess, in the embryonic stages of using some of that thinking in some of the projects you're working on or may work on in the future.
So my knowledge is only scratching the surface, but
I know,
like,
yeah.
from what I've learned and understood about certain things like indigenous cultures and how they view land and how they have like things like having they see themselves as part of nature, really, to start with. So they cultivate the land, and then they'll thank it for giving them the produce and stuff, and then they'll move on and they'll sow elsewhere and let the land rest, and different things like how when they move on, they'll let land rest, and they'll let it recultivate itself, and the ecosystems thrive and stuff like that. And I think we've kind of disrupted a lot of that. Colonialism has disrupted a lot of that, a lot of how we're supposed to live off the land. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from those cultures, even down to how land is owned and looked after. Like in America, I understand they do this thing where they acknowledge whose land they are meeting on. Say if you're having an event, they'll talk about those things. They'll talk about who owns this and who owns the ecosystem in which we're existing, and who's looked after it, and things like that. And I just find that all really interesting. Where as in the UK, so I've been listening to this audio book called "Who Owns England."
Yeah.
And it's like it just talks through like how like it's very opaque that the land ownership in
Really,
like there's like that we don't actually know who people are. It's often directed to trusts, or
yes,
you can't put a face to or a name to certain land, and it's almost the book was talking about how I think a few years ago they started the land registry, where they started to actually collect the data on who owns what land in England, and it's something like 36,000 people owned about 83% of the land in the UK. Some figure around that, and they still don't really know who all of those people are. And it's like it tracks to like a lot of the aristocracy of this country, and it tells loads of stories about how trespassing laws and things like that were put in place,
and how they came about
accessing certain land. And it's really deep because land is like a finite resource. It's like there's no, it does it, but it sits underneath everything. Like everything comes from the land, right? So when people control that, that's the ultimate like resource which we all kind of live. And in America, the one thing that they were asking for after the slave trade was abolished was to give black people some land. 40 acres and a mule is what they asked for. And they still didn't really get that. And like, but anyway, in the UK, it's just even worse. You won't really see much. They're still just trying to figure out who owns the majority of the land here. And it's you own your house, you can own your house, but the land underneath it and all this sort of stuff. So it's just really interesting as a curiosity of mine, and like just the projects that I've been doing in my neighborhood was just about, reclaiming the space, so building the grow room. Did you see the grow room there?
No, tell us about that.
So it's basically a vertical garden structure.
Okay.
So it's like a spherical shape that
Yeah.
we just built it on the street with some neighbours and friends. And for me, that was an act of land reclamation. Because I live in an inner city play area that is like maybe a lot of people might walk by. It's not much, or like it's disregarded, or there's certain places we have litter problems and stuff like that with people. But like to build something beautiful in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
how that changed the dynamic and the space of how people interact and stuff. That's what the goal of that was.
Yeah.
And it was building on my own exploration of growing and community gardening and stuff like that. So yeah, that piece that is just built on the pavement. People could go inside and they can take herbs and put in their food and stuff like this. And then there's a patch of grass at the back that I think me and the neighbours are maybe going to turn into more of a growing space, but just reclaiming space. And
So you just go because you kind of I want this to be heard loud and clear, underlined. You and your neighbours have decided that just a piece of land, a piece of an area on the street, which
yeah,
generally most people walk by as if like they wouldn't necessarily attribute any ownership to themselves to this land,
yeah,
and you and your neighbours are saying no, this is our land,
yeah,
and you're just building stuff on it,
yeah. So
just like that.
we did some planters. We did some more planters because the thing is as well, people don't think about this. Like when they're getting rid of rubbish and they're dropping their bin bags on the street corner because it's in the same spot where people have dropped bin bags and they're just
Wow.
So I'm like, if you can feel okay to drop bin bags on the corner,
Yeah.
why can I not feel okay to drop a big beautiful garden on the corner
Wow.
and have it there? It's the same agency over the space, but you're just taking it and doing a positive thing.
Wow.
And people looked at the thing that we grew and they were like, "Oh, it's gonna get vandalized, or I'm gonna take it and put it in my back garden, or have you got this TV, or does it?" And then you've got other people who are commenting saying, "What a beautiful monument to the neighborhood," and stuff like this. And it's really like shifted a lot of things. So yeah, I just found it interesting to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's phenomenal, and I think that goes to kind of just the way your mind works. And when we're looking at now, then our community and the Black community, the African diaspora, like, and how we all the things that are going on in the media, but all the things that have been going on for years, right? How are you thinking? Or do you have any thoughts on that? Like how creatively we begin to move the conversation forward? Have you had any thoughts on that, or are you still in the, what stage are you in your processing of everything?
You mean in terms of like the cultural output that we put as Black people? Be thinking about like
Yeah, I think
pushing that forward.
Yeah, and also just like how what's needed next? Is it healing? Is it action? Is it listening? Is it like how are you thinking from your more globalized worldview? How are you thinking about our community?
I think with our community, we need to when Black people are telling you what they need, you need to listen because you need to listen and know that they know what they need. And all of those things that you mentioned, healing, resource, being able to do stuff, we need all of these things. And if so, I think most of all, the underpinning, I think what they need is to unlock people's agency over what they need to be able to get what they need or set up the things that they need. That's what I feel is most important. Yeah, because all of those things are important right now. Healing, we need to care more for the planet's our ecological systems are being disrupted left, right, and centre, and we don't know what the next 10 years are going to look like. So there's going to be a lot of change and disruption and all sorts. So I think any which way people need to get resourced to deal with that in order to survive is important to listen to. And yeah, I think really now's the time to find pay attention to what's going on inside ourselves, pay attention to what's going on around us, in our community, in our families, in society, and actually make strides towards those things. I was just on a call earlier, which was about healing.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing this series of sessions called the Healing Corner,
Mm-hmm.
and someone was saying how because we just created this space of healing for collective care, and talking about this pandemic situation that everyone there is like a collective grief
Yeah.
that everyone's dealing with, right? Of a way of life that is no more, or is we don't know, we don't necessarily know what's next. But
Yeah.
within that as well, people have had stuff that they've been dealing with before this, and can't find necessarily the space to think about it individually. That can get lost in the collective, and so it's I do think the collective care and the healing thing is really important now. But yeah, and rest.
Collective care, healing, rest,
Yeah.
and within ourselves or holistically.
It's got to be both, isn't it? It's got to be both. So I'm a both and kind of guy.
Yeah, no, you are. You definitely are. You're not caught in the binaries, as they say, which I think is, again, it's just a real powerful position to be in, because
Yeah.
To not, it takes a whole level, and this is why, again, I'm always inspired by you, always encouraged by you, and why I wanted you on this call is because you have you're okay with being patient with the process of understanding what's going on. And when you don't understand what's going on, you're okay to embrace all of the options, right? And I think this was even epitomized on Friday when I was on IG Live with Daryl, and we were talking about Black history and the history that's taught in school. And you
Yeah.
mentioned this idea of, you think that histories, plural,
Yeah.
there should be a plurality of histories
Yeah.
that is taught, and it's
Yeah.
that kind of thinking that I think is so powerful.
Yeah.
Basically, and the only people it scares is the people who have always been in control of the single narrative,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you say, well, actually, no, let's hear from a diverse collective. You always work with collectives. There's not much you do on your ones. Like, literally,
Yeah.
you're always part of the collective. So you're always thinking about this, like how the greater thing is going to come from us working together.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's really powerful. And because sometimes I just worry, not worry, but I think about how, if it's only, and we kind of know it internally, that if it's only one group that are pushing for something, whatever that change is, it's just not as powerful as if there are diverse voices in it. That's just facts.
Yeah. Yeah. This is true, and we're all connected. Whether we're it all has an impact on everyone has an impact on everyone in some way, shape, or form. It's all interconnected. So the deep recognition of that is what I guess makes me think or feel the way I do about how I approach things. But within that, like, I still find it really important to do the inner work and the individual work, and it can be really hard because you have to negotiate a lot of things, I guess, and navigate internal things. But like, if you can't do that, then you can't really show up for the collective, and you can't really have anything to offer the collective. So I think a lot of the I think that a lot of those who control the bigger narratives is because they haven't faced what's going on inside themselves a lot of the time as well. And that insecurity is what it is. White supremacy as a concept doesn't really exist. but we talk about white supremacy. It's actually white inferiority. They're not dealing with the project this supremacy because they're not dealing with the inferiority complex within. So that's why we are where we are in terms of like the fear of Black people, the fear and the fragility of Black people getting what they need to live.
Yeah,
is what pushes that out. Like that.
That's
and crazy. It's really
deep.
It's it's mash up.
Yeah. Brother man, you know, I could talk to you all day, every day. I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your insights. Friends, family, I want you to connect with what Daniel's doing. Check him out online. Reach out to him and just, have a conversation with him. I think, you know, since I've been kind of speaking to Daniel kind of over the last couple of years, he's just a trove of insight, of creativity, yes, and of just gives you a refreshing way to think about everything, to be honest. And Daniel, you know, I'm eternally grateful for that. I've told you that many occasions, and I mean it when I say it. And thank you for being part of this, for kicking off our Creativity Week. And I know you're going to probably pop in throughout the week as we have other speakers at 8 o'clock in the evening during the week. So, friends, family, thank you so much for tuning in. Daniel, thank you so much for your time.
Who's next?
Who's next? Tomorrow we have Bobby Bovell.
Oh, sweet.
At 8 p.m. So yeah, tune in live. He's a creative consultant, and he's going to have a lot to say. So thank you so much, Daniel, brother, and I'll speak to you soon.
All right, good night.